when it comes to culturing these things out.
I had the great pleasure, privilege, and honor of having him on in the first year I was doing this program, 1994.
Right.
Which was about a couple of years after I published my book called AIDS Exposed. Now, of course, Bob Strecker had the first video out on the whole HIV scan.
The Strecker Memorandum or something.
That's right, the Strecker Memorandum, and it was on video, and Bob told the story, and his brother Theodore, Ted Strecker, was clearly murdered. Looking into this, and they found out too much too early.
Yes, they did. But Strecker, Dr. Strecker, he wasn't one to really goof around. He just came right down to the facts. And he said, okay, let's find out if this mechanism actually works. And I'm going to get into some real detail here, Jeff, but first let me just explain a little bit about my background, so they understand where I'm coming from.
Sure, please do.
My work at the time was audio engineering. I probably built, thousands of audio amplifiers that are sought after today, on eBay and all these places. But
well, that's right. Hold on, John.
Commercial.
Yeah, there it is. Hold on, and we'll come right back. You'll see when we come back, as John continues talking about his background, how this all came together perfectly to make him one of the very key people to work on Royal Raymond Rife's universal microscope, which he did with Dr. Bob Strecker. Months he and Bob Strecker worked on this microscope, trying to get it to function again. This is an amazing story, and when we continue, we'll hear much more. So don't go away. This, again, is I call it an historic broadcast, because we're going to talk about things that have really never been talked about on the radio before. In just a minute. Okay, and we're back. Playing with John Bedini. Okay, John, let's pick up that thread and carry on.
Anyway,
audio engineering.
Yeah, background is in audio engineering and design engineering for audio power amplifiers, which is, if you really look at everything requires an amplifier of some sort. So that's the way I've always viewed it, that it's just, another item that allows circuits to work and things like that, and allows you to hear sound and, of course, pass signals through, filters and things like that. But anyway, what I was working on was, at the time, was a three-dimensional sound system where you could place the singer in the center, and then you could actually take the two speakers and fold them out around you. In other words, interferometry. Now, here's the key point. Interferometry. It's actually something that takes the sound apart and then puts it back together in a new mix. So, in other words, what you end up with is a new right and left channel, and then you end up with the spatial dimensions, which you can alter and you can move around yourself with phases and things. And thus, this is why I've put the pictures on the internet site, because this is very important when you mix sound waves. See, there's all these harmonics that are generated and everything.
Right.
And it's not known actually perfect, that it's a perfect frequency that actually killed these things. And this is what Strecker and I wanted to find out. We wanted to know exactly what was killing these little bacterium and viruses. So,
and just for you newcomers, the basic concept is Dr. Royal Rife was able to discover frequencies which were fatal to bacteria and viruses and other microorganisms which cause disease. Now, was it the pure frequency, or was it something else involved with the frequency? And that's what John is talking about.
Yeah. So, Dr. Strecker and myself probably spent months. Here's exactly, Jeff. We went and we basically hired John Crane.
John Crane, for you listening, was Royal Rife's last partner.
Correct.
He met Rife, I guess, in the late 40s, early 50s. Was with him pretty much to the end when Rife died in 1971. Crane has kind of a checkered pedigree, as it were, a checkered loyalty to this whole thing. But go ahead.
Yeah. So we drove to San Diego, and we found Crane's house. About 4 or 5 of us, and we went up and we knocked on the door, and of course Crane answered the door, but the house was like in a shambles when we got there.
Now, this house was in San Diego.
Yeah.
And if I remember, I talked to Crane. I didn't go meet him, but it was on Pepper Lane.
Yeah, Pepper Drive.
That Pepper Drive in San Diego. It's a typical residential neighborhood.
Yeah.
But I had other people go down there as well, and they reported the same thing you did. Now, this is a man literally with a legacy, folks, in his home of the greatest medical scientific breakthrough in recorded history, and it looked like a junkyard, I guess.
Well,
almost.
Jeff, when we entered the yard, there was every contraption known to man.
You mean outside in the weather?
Outside, there were solar cookers, there were pendulums, there were sun trackers. You name it, this was in the backyard. And so when he finally opened the door and I said, well, we're here to see you, he opened the door and he invited us in, and there was nowhere to sit. There was nowhere to sit. And so I introduced myself, and I told him what I was up to at the time, after, many conversations with him on the phone. And, of course, I introduced him to some partners I had, which these partners, in the end, were to give him money, for taking John Crane and for him coming up to Silmar to work with us. But I said, the first thing that I wanted to see was a microscope. So I got led down this aisleway, Jeff, through all these boxes and everything, and I ended up in this dirt cellar.
Dirt?
Yeah, dirt cellar, like a root cellar. And that's what I remember. Broken cement, some dirt, broken cement, some more dirt, all right?
Oh,
and here was this beautiful virus number 3 microscope all taken apart. It was just in pieces.
You mean, okay, now I'm kind of excited by this. John and I have talked about this, but every time I hear it, it's amazing. The Rife Universal Microscope number 3. Yeah,
the big one.
The big one enabled him to magnify at unprecedented levels of magnification. This is in 1930-31. It enabled him to see literally live viruses. Now, the microscopes of those days could magnify 5 to 10,000 power. Rife was up in the 60,000 power range with this thing. But beyond that, this microscope had over how many parts did it have, John?
It had. Oh, geez, Jeff, it had.
It was in
the thousands.
I think it had 5,000 parts.
Yeah, it was in the thousands, because every one of these parts was laid out on a table.
So Crane had taken it apart.
Oh, yeah, many times.
All right, well, now Royal Rife, and many of you who, if you go to my website and do a site search for Royal Rife, you'll find a lot of information. In fact, you can go to the top of the page in the New Earth link, take that link, and you'll see Rife frequency instruments or research